comparing the KV11 and the TT192 primary Medu Netjer evidence with today's DNA testing. And I think that people are afraid to do that. I just want to do that just to have some fun on YouTube, because let's test two inscriptions during near the same time periods in the same Upper Egyptian regions, and we're going to compare it with today's DNA testing. And I'm gonna say today's because I'm gonna use Dr. Sotiata's scientific publication, in which his publication agrees actually with the inscription data that I'm gonna be sharing from Upper Kemet, and then this data, because they didn't compare it. So we're gonna show possibly why they didn't compare, or hopefully this research can motivate them to compare, because the Medu Netjer inscriptions is kind of like very accurate according to Dr. Sotiata's information. Now, the KV11 tomb, which is the Table of Nations, 1186 to 1184 BC, is located at Upper Southern Kemet on this map, sourced from Wikipedia, and we find that it is near this upper or southern region of Kemet. And then we go to the arrow and we see the TT192 is 1292 BC to 1189 BC. It's located upper southern Kemet, around the similar regions as the KV11. So during this time period and during this particular place in the southern region, both royal houses or tombs, royal tombs that bury, Nasubbitis, they describe the people themselves in each situation near the same age in the same region. And they describe themselves similar and the same as Black African people. Now, when we go to the all sample remains radiocarbon dated from the paper from 3288 BC to 426 CE, location Lower Kemet, which is Northern Kemet, the date is much later, a much later period. All the remains are at that particular age, which is later than the age that our inscriptions are showing. So this is possibly some of the admixture they're seeing in even Northern Kemet is probably due to that time period where it was a lot of migrations back and forth between Northeast Africa and Asia, period, during that time period. This is inside the KV11 tomb. On the bottom, you see the black arrow, which is over top of the self-described ancient Egyptians in the KV11 as A. Then I have B, which is in red arrow, pointing to inside the KV11 tomb to what we would call Indo-Europeans, or some will call Asiatic. I agree with the Indo-European. I have an inscription that also agrees with it, which is a master thesis from these people are what you call Amo, and the box C, which is in a darkest gray color, because these are dark, represented as dark pigmented people as well, and this is C. So when we look up, I make clear, I get clear, more clear inscriptions, primary evidence of this tomb inside of the tomb. So clearly we see that the ancient Egyptians here, skin is painted black. You see the Medu Netjer in between them. In A, up here is Vermech, and the definition is Egyptians or people, and I saw it's Budge and Faulkner. So we see that the Medu Netjer is clear as day. Even in the bottom, when you see this is the actual tomb where you on stone. So this exists, and the Medu Netjer in between, so no mistakes was made by the scribe. When we go to the next group of beings, we see Amo, the Medu Netjer in between, exactly. So we go to B, Amo, Indo-European, I saw it's Joke and Cambone, or Asiatic, Budge or Faulkner. And C, we see that the boxes here, next to the last group of people, we see the Nahisu bird and the Medu Netjer in between go up, the Nahisu, and they look identical to the Egyptians. In this time period, even in Upper Kemet, we see that the identity of the people, this is 1,000 years before the journal remains that was studied, or not 1,000 years, but a couple hundred years before the journal remains, mummies, and they describe themselves as other Africans within the continent near in the southern region. So there was no distinction between themselves, which is the Remet, and other Sudanese black Nubians, the Nahisu. All right. So again, in the KV11 tomb in Upper Egypt, the depictions of the ancient Egyptians is identical to the depictions of the Nubians, Egyptians, people, Budge, Faulkner. This is a duplication drawing of this actual tomb. Then we have Sudanese blacks, Nubians, an actual depiction of the actual tomb and people. Why are these black Ramesh Egyptians dressed the same as other Nahisu Nubians blacks? I hear a lot of people, that argument is so weak and fragile that they will say that just because their clothes are dressed the same, that the artists whom the Sesh has been recording for over 5,000 years in Medu Netjer, so they will be masters of Medu Netjer. It's like a person that been studying TVs for 6,000 years, or working on TVs. Imagine this TV during the 6,001 year, how advanced it will be. So I think these scribes knew exactly what they were doing when they was depicting this, because of the time frame of the Medu Netjer scribes and the skill of artistry of being a sesh. And I don't think they would ever make, they will make scribal mistakes, that's common, but they were masters at the Medu Netjer, and they knew exactly what they were trying to convey. Even those times it could be confusing. So this is no confusion to us. We go to ancient inscriptions, and we know that the Medu Netjer people in this KV11 tomb, as the Remet, ancient Egyptians, is depicted exactly the same as the Nubians depicted, but they are, not only do they phenotypically look the same with having black skin, but they have the exact same clothes. So we are wondering, some people, they get an argument, well, these are really Nubians, but the scribe make the mistake. No, these are Egyptians that are dressing like other blacks. We find that today, if one rapper come out with a good style, even in rap music, if his style is good, everyone will start sounding like him. If one person likes someone's style in the hood, and they got good dress, the other, even though we got beef, we will adopt each other's traditions and slick adornments. So this is from Taylor Brian Woodcock, under the supervision of Dr. Mariam Ayed for the American University of Cairo School of Humanities and Social Sciences. And he had a journal called Noticing Neighbors, Reconsidering Ancient Egyptian Perceptions of Ethnicity. And one of the sections is called Common Culture, Language, Dress, and Physical Characteristics. He gives a papyrus inscription as an Anastasi 3A, and in this attestation, we have that Egyptian written sources contain some descriptions of the Southerners' culture that agree with their bright and intricate representation in Egyptian visual sources. A single sheet papyrus containing a list of luxury items and other trade goods from the South provides a vivid description of Southerners brought to Egypt and their adornments. Papyrus Cola contains a similar description of a different Southern ethnic group and their ornamentation with similar language. Passer, an Egyptian official, penned a letter to an unnamed Southerner, presumably a ruler, regarding the presentation of tribute to Egypt. He invited the Southerner to image the scene. So this is a common culture through trade. This is a text that depicts Egyptians liking the flamboyant adornments of their neighbors. And actually the Southerners was bringing the people of the Medu Netjer linen, clothes, their style, the gold fans, uh, things of that nature was being traded from Nubia to Upper Egypt and Egypt itself. So the Egyptian people, this would make sense why they would look like a Nubian in dress or clothes, because they was actually getting clothes literally from Nubia. And the inscriptions say Nehesu Neferu and Kesh in Shaul Habesh Baha'iwu Tebi Im Tep Wut Hajj Ta'im Safri Ne Shin Kermit Erdwut. And that means find the Hisu or Kush fit for giving a fan shelter. They are shod with white sandals and clad in fine linen, their bracelets on their hands. See, so they love the way the Nubians wrote, like everybody today, like the way we dress today. This is the TT192 tomb in Upper Kemet, 9 bowls. This inscription shows 2 black men representing Upper and Lower Kemet. This is an interesting inscription that has different phenotypes, complexions on different phenotypical human beings, Homo sapiens, from different parts of the globe, according to the Medu Netjer artists and what they wanted to be depicted. And it shows Africans. Some of these places are in Africa, and some of these places are outside of Africa. So what I want to get here is 9 bowls, but I didn't include 2, right? Because I don't think I had the full inscription that clear. But then I got to the University of Chicago archive and I said, well, it's too late. I already did everything. But it doesn't matter here because we find different representations of bound captive. These people represent images of countries. So human beings was being represented to mean where they are from or their region. So these people would dominate this type of region or community. And this is why the images here represent places. Well, they are of men, but they represent places and communities in parts of Egypt, and they represent communities and people outside of Egypt. So what's interesting is that they were very detailed in doing this, in naming this, doing it. They express extreme detail. So we will go to the words of Dr. Thury. He states, these conquered or subdued countries are from right to left. The Hayu Nibus, which I have a star because I did not screenshot that. The Shatiyu, I did not screenshot that, so that's why I have a star. I screenshotted Tashima, Upper Egypt, which is represented by the number 1 here. The Shastiu M, inhabitants of the oasis. Lower Egypt, Tamihu, which is here. The Pitishu, desert of the east, which is here. The Tahino, which is of course North Africa. The Untiu Seti, which is Nubians or the Nubian region. The Mentunu Sejet Bedouins of Asia, and that is represented here. So out of these groups, I did the most common place between Egypt and Nubia. So I say I'm gonna gather all the Egyptians and I'm gonna gather all the Nubians from this scene that represent places that also represent men. Well, the men is represented as places, and there's uh different categories of the non-bowl enemies. But why this is so striking and remarkable is that the darkest man on here is the Egyptian. And the second darkest man is a Nubian. You know, that's what strikes me, not only in hairstyle, wigs, but in colors and phenotype. So number 1, that will be in this red box here. We have number one, the black color, Ta Shema. This is the hieroglyphs, the Medu Netjer. That's Ta, Shema, and Nut, representing a region, Upper Kemet, Upper Egypt. So this black man is a representation of Upper Egypt. This inscription is very important. So number 2 is Tamihu. Number 2 is here. This is another type of Egyptian community that's in Egypt during this time frame. And the representation of people in lower Kemet or northern Egypt is represented as some type of black man as well in this region. So in number 3, I added this because his phenotype is very close to the phenotype in Upper Egypt, and it is a Nutiu City. I call them pillar people of Nubia, Nubians. So this is number 3. So I take all of those particular people out. So TT192 Medu Netjer phenotype comparison, collection of black men representing regions, Medu Netjer primary evidence of phenotype diversity. So this information would agree with Professor Dr. Sul Kiyata in stating that Africans have a lot of diversity in Africa. What really defines an African is it black skin, because we have here the Satil who are in Upper Nubia, which is even further down south than Lower Nubia, definitely near the equatorial uh, equator line and things of that nature. And we have the Satil, and that's an Upper Nubian, but his skin is kind of creamish, darkish brown color, like my complexion. His complexion, I would say, is my complexion perfectly. This is my complexion. You can see that he have a sharp, tight nose. He have a beard, which is common in Nubia. He has looks like a wig, which is commonplace in both areas of Nubia. I guess to protect their head from the sun of burning. I mean, you're near the equator. Your head could get sculpted with heat, and his lips is thick and protrude. So this is a typical image of a Negro or a black man, or what they call an African, or one would how to define a sub-Saharan. Uh, this is also a Nubian, and we see his phenotype as dark brown. We see his hair is short with the typical wig of that region. So we know that this is a typical black, dark-skinned African in that region as pillar people of Nubia. So we have 2 Nubian people with different phenotype expressions. We have a dark brown skin with the typical wig with the paste that's commonplace for East Africans, and then we have the typical bearded brown skin Nubian that's in the Sudan. And then on your left you have a Upper Egyptian. This is an actual self-depiction of an Egyptian, which he is actually darker in color than the Nubian, and his African features seem to be definite African features as well as the Nubian. And his hair is kind of similar, his wig, but it is a slight difference. Um, so this Upper Egyptian or southern from the southern region of Egypt is definitely more compatible phenotypical to the pillar people of Nubia. And this Upper Egyptian here, Tamihu, lower northern Kemet, is similar to the phenotype in Upper Nubia. So we have Upper Nubians and Lower Nubians with identical, seem like, again, from the KV11. And this is the TT, another separate tomb in another separate location in kind of a separate time period, near the same time period, but before the remains that was tested. We find that the Egyptians again identified themselves with Nubians. Beautiful. So it is amazing how the Egyptians identified themselves with Nubian people again. And this is actually a separate tomb near the same age. Again, no clothes, but now you have the color phenotypical expression of skin complexion, hair texture, cultural style, um, everything. All of these men would be considered Africans, black men, different phenotypical skin expressions, showing the extremity of genomic diversity. And typically, all of these features would be considered African, especially the Upper Egyptian. He is actually darker than the Nubian. So again, This Upper Egyptian could go past for Nubian. This Nubian can pass for Upper Egyptian. This Nubian can pass for Upper Egyptian or Nubian. Statements in peer-reviewed journal. This is the OSF scientific journal. This is a response to the genetic article that we went over before by Professor Dr. Sokiata and Dr. Ellen Aslan. They did a response a couple years later, got it submitted to a publication and refuted the claims of that mummy. And this is what Professor Dr. Sokiata said. All of the samples are from the northern half of Egypt, from one known, which is 2.4%, 142 of ancient Egyptian gnomes. Ancient Egyptian culture originated in southern Egypt. And we see that how the Egyptians themselves depicted themselves in southern Egypt as African as their Sudanic Negro neighbors. So they was as African and as black as the Nubian neighbors, as the Medu Netjer evidence show without a shadow of a doubt. It said the social cultural dynamics are not fully considered. The information on the origin and social status is incomplete or unknowable in fact. The mummies are clearly assumed to be representative of the local population based on an incomplete archaeological report. So Dr. Sokiata and his team, they're stating that the people of that journal is basing things on an incomplete archaeological report. That's why I tell people the dangers of genetics. Genetics come with a lot of social biasness. It says the timeline is not representative of ancient Egyptian history. He said 3,000 years is missing from the genetic testing. And he put, what about pre-dynastic, early dynastic, old kingdom, middle kingdom? You know, you just skip that. So sex bias sampling, mitochondrial DNA cannot recover population demography of the whole country unless the sample size is large enough and representative in terms of chronology, regional variation, and ethnicity. So this is enough from the response. This is a beautiful response. It is a lot in this scientific publication. I posted the link. Y'all check this out from Professor Dr. Sochiata. Up-to-date research. They published it in 2018. Conclusion. Medu Netjer primary evidence supports the self-identity of the ancient Kemetu Egyptians themselves as phenotypically Black African as other Black Africans depicted during the time periods from 1186 to 1184 BC to 1292 BC before the time periods of the sample remains tested and radiocarbon dated to the late New Kingdom to the Roman period from the published journal paper in Nature Research Journal. Ancient Egyptian mummy genome suggests an increase of sub-Saharan African ancestry in post-Roman periods. This is the name of the article. So in this article, people, they study only the remains that covers 1388 BCE and 426 CE. That's it. And also, it was only from lower Kemet, which is northern, which is recent, fairly recent. And I want y'all, it say, we also observed the published response by Professor of Anthropology, Geneticist, Dr. Soichiite, and Linguistic Professor, Dr. Ellen Aslan, published in OSF. So we have the two published papers. On the left, we have the response, and the response paper is 2018. This is witness, yeah, this was published 2018. This was published 2017. This was published in Nature Communications Scientific Journal, Open Access. It says ancient Egyptian mummy genome suggests an increase of sub-Saharan African ancestry in post-Roman periods. And this is the response paper from S.O.Y. Chiita, Alan Asselin, Juan Gordine, and Juan Philip Gordine from the Oregon Health and Science University, Smithsonian Institution, and National Institute for Agricultural Research. It says ancient Egyptian genomes from northern Egypt, further discussion. Okay, so this is what he's going into. I want y'all to check this scientific publication out in OSF, and y'all can check this out at Nature Communications. This is Nature Communications is the scientific abstract where a lot of people be sharing on Facebook, but they don't know it was a scientific response that was published in OSF that, shows the methodological flaws and errors of this genetic testing, in which I show Medu Netjer evidence clear that the people in Upper Kemet definitely identified themselves, which they are Egyptians. And we could go back to Alan Anselin's, Dr. Soyati's comments. It says all of the samples are from the northern half of Egypt, from one known, which is 142 of ancient Egyptian knowns. Ancient Egyptian culture originated in southern Upper Egypt, and the southern Upper Egyptians are identified as Tashima, Upper Kemet, Egypt, and they are definitely as black as their brothers in Nubia as well. So, Shem, blessings.